Hi, this is Nerd Mom here. I am going to review the new Jungle Book movie directed by Jon Favreau. I went in really skeptical of this because, I grew up with the Disney animated version, which I very much liked as a kid, and we sing those songs on the kids' radio station that we have. They come up all the time. My son likes those songs, and he has seen the animated Disney version. He's read a little bit of the book with his dad, the original Kipling book, but it was a little too soon for him, so we'll save that for later. Let's see, how do I sum this up? Somehow, the director has managed to not only make something that is better than the original, but also pays homage to it in a really respectful way. Not just pays homage to it. He's done three things. Number one is that he's managed to keep that playfulness and joy that was contained in the Disney animated version. He's also managed to incorporate more of the sort of darker, more serious tone of the books. And he's also managed to make the whole thing a coherent single narrative, whereas both the original Kipling book and the Disney animated movies were really episodic. It was like, this thing happened, and then this thing happened, and now we have this song, and now this thing's happening. Oh, and here's this ending tacked on. Jon Favreau has crafted this narrative out of exactly the same elements, but it tells a single narrative, which is basically based around Shere Khan's desire to kill Mowgli. So he uses that to bring Mowgli from one thing to another while also maintaining this consistent narrative through the whole thing, which really makes for a more satisfying overall experience. And it really kept my kid watching, whereas with the original Disney one, it was kind of like, oh, well, that was fun, but I could go off for a while, or, oh, I'm bored of this now. This was one complete story arc, and it really, it kept him gripped. The other thing that I'm not sure a lot of people have noticed, it's kind of obvious from the beginning that Jon Favreau is attempting to pay homage, and he does pay homage to the original Disney style, in that we start out with a sort of retro version of the Disney castle, and then a book, an actual physical book that opens and then introduces us into the story. I don't know if you remember, like, the Winnie the Pooh movies and the other old Disney versions that start with this book that opens, and then we go into this story. I really enjoyed that, and it comes back at the end for the credits, and it's very cute. One of my very favorite parts of the movie. But then you might think that element had disappeared once the movie starts, but it really doesn't. Once we go into the sort of live action, realistic story, you still feel that it's not quite realistic, and not in a bad way, not in a like the animators failed kind of way, but in an intentional way, because this entire movie feels like Disneyland. It feels like you're going on the Jungle Cruise, like especially the character of Baloo the bear. He feels like he just came right out of the Bear Jamboree from Disneyland. I don't even know if they still have that at Disneyland, but it has that feel. Like, it's not quite real, but it's really magical. It's almost like these are animatronics come to life. So the experience that you get going to the movie is like going to Disneyland. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. And it's very subtle in the movie itself, even though it was made obvious by the literal bookends. So that was really fun. The other thing I want to talk about was the violence level in the movie, because I know some people were saying that it was a little too intense for some kids. My kid is usually okay with violence. I would say that the actual violent content is pretty low. There is definitely animal death, but it's not shown in any explicit fashion. I think it's Aquila is the leader of the wolf pack that Mowgli belongs to. So basically, Mowgli's father figure is killed, but it's definitely off screen, and I think younger kids will not even get that he died, just that Shere Khan replaced him, because they don't show it. He just kind of gets thrown off, and that's it. Later, they do mention that Shere Khan has killed him, but I think for a lot of kids that will not. It won't really sink in. So if your kid is too young to handle it, they're probably also too young to understand that it's actually happened. So I don't think you really have to worry about that. There's definitely a death at the end, but again, it's not explicit. It's sort of like, enveloped in fire, and that's the end of that. So it wasn't too traumatizing in that sense. It was intense in the action sequences. There's a lot of, Mowgli being in peril. But I think that's kind of good for kids. There were definitely scenes where my son was crouched down behind the seat in front of him because he was freaked out, but he was freaked out because he was so into it, and he identified so closely with Mowgli, who is about the same age as him. And he couldn't look away because he needed to see what happened next, but he was also kind of like, oh my gosh. But it was a good kind of scared. It was not like oh my gosh, I'm terrified, I'm curled up in mom's lap. It was like, oh, this movie is so cool, like I can't look away kind of scared. So I thought it was a really positive thing. I like to give my kids experiences of being afraid and being able to deal with fear in a safe way. So a movie where, we know everything's going to end happily for the good guys, and it's all going to be wrapped up, and there's not too much actual, death and mayhem and violence. There's no actual blood. Where they can experience those things and be able to deal with them and then come out and feel like they're brave and they can handle it, just like Mowgli. I think that's really good developmentally. So I was happy about taking my kid to this movie. I thought it was good for him. He felt really brave coming out at the end. So overall, very good experience for the entire family. I wouldn't really put an age restriction on this movie at all. If you go to an earlier showing, I would almost bring my younger kid. He's almost 3, but he can't sit through movies. So if your kid is old enough that he can sit through movies, I would totally take them to this. Loved it all the way through. Thank you for watching. That's my review of the Jungle Book.